This is White Plains Week, the weekly roundup of White Plains, Westchester, and world news. With John Bailey, editor and publisher of the daily internet newspaper White Plains Citizen Net Reporter, WPCNR.com. Jim Benneroff, editor and publisher of SuburbanStreet.com and WhitePlains.com. And me, Peter Katz, formerly with NBC, ABC News, and stations from Boston to Los Angeles. White Plains Week, what's happening, who are the newsmakers, what's in store for the future. The views and opinions expressed on this program are solely those of the participants. White Plains Week is presented on Optimum Cable Channel 76, Verizon Fios Channel 45, and on the internet at whiteplainsweek.com, youtube.com, and wpcommunitymedia.org. Now, White Plains Week.
Good evening, Mr. and Mrs. White Plains, Westchester, and the world. This is John Bailey, and this is White Plains Week in the news business for 16 years. And in the news of the week of December 16th, 2016, White Plains Stakeholder Task Force presents strategic plan for redevelopment of White Plains Transit District. White Plains Week brings you extended coverage in a special video report. Harrison considers development of corporate drive site by Wegmans, a Rochester-based supermarket. Greenberg proposes an assisted living facility for the abandoned Frank's Nursery site. Governor Andrew Cuomo celebrates topping off of the 8 main span towers of the new Tappan Zee Bridge. The county legislature approves the county executive's $1.8 billion budget 10-7 and will take a closer look at the county airport lease agreement proposed. If the lease is not approved, the $15 million revenue gap the lease would have filled will be paid out of the county fund balance. We'll have our ongoing report, Trump in Transition. White Plains High School recognizes 160 scholar athletes from its 9 sports teams, each student averaging 90 in their grade point average. Congratulations. Winterfest is presented all week through this weekend just off Renaissance Square in White Plains. Now we go to the White Plains Week Rollo Newsreel March of Time for the week of December 16th, 2016. And this was the week where White Plains presented its downtown summary of its strategic plan. Peter, tell us about it.
In case you couldn't figure it out, I'm Peter Katz. Jim Benneroff is on assignment, and that guy is John Bailey. And you know, there was a meeting. It was at 360 Hamilton Avenue in downtown White Plains, and it was Monday night. And the presentation was highlighted when 3 members of the stakeholder task force spoke about it. The planning commissioner for the city of White Plains, Chris Gomez, spoke about it. And first up was Mayor Roach, who spoke about it. Mayor Roach claimed there was tremendous public input, which he said came through people answering the so-called question of the week, which was asked online, from attending the public meetings, and from in-person surveys. No one from Parsons Brinkerhoff spoke. They're the consulting firm which was hired for more than $800,000 for the project. The mayor had some very harsh criticism of the urban renewal effort in the 1970s and 1980s, which really saved White Plains from winding up in the scrap heap like so many other cities have. And the mayor had some unkind things to say about the existing Metro North train station.
It's got a ticket window, some multi-access points, but when you get up to the platform, that's all it is, a platform with a roof on it. Nothing really functions well. It was not designed well, it's not attractive, it doesn't work well for pedestrians going in, it doesn't work well for cyclists going in, it doesn't work well for kiss and ride, it doesn't work well for the taxis. What we wanted to do is not just simply get in there and say, let's build a new train station and a new parking lot. That's not the concept. The concept is we got to change the way that functions in our city. And one of the ways we're going to do that is have some public open space there. So you can have events, you can have some green, some activity space for people. Change the way it looks. You also would have retail, you can have residential, you could have some commercial, but all of that's is being analyzed and to determine what would be the best fit. When we go out for expressions of interest, we'll see what the market has. But in general, I think you're going to see residential.
There's different levels of investment involved with getting a station from what might currently be something that functions, but it's not very appealing, to something that becomes more appealing, and then finally something that people can be very proud of. And because there's various steps along that path, I think we've identified that, and we have a good sense of what it takes to get there. And in the very short term, it is noted that we have a capital program that's about $30 billion or so. And of that, about, I would say, 85% goes to state of good repair. So that's repairing platforms, repairing canopies, signal systems, track, roadbed, new rail cars, new repair facilities, and so forth. So that doesn't leave a whole lot left for doing completely new stuff. But there is a program that's a station enhancement program that's been identified. And the state is very proud of the fact that they've brought in a well-known architecture firm to really try to refresh these stations. And so unfortunately we're not at the point where those images or those designs have been finalized, but they're very, very close, and they're close enough that they will be very synergistic with this. And what it'll effectively do is, in the first phase, really change the look and feel of the station in terms of the lighting, the materials, just the feeling, in terms of airiness and so forth, at the very beginning, without major structural intervention or changing, rebuilding the station itself.
Pedestrians are coming first here with open space, with bike lanes, with bike storage. Really, the car is something that is secondary to what we want to see in this downtown development. I walk almost everywhere when I've got to shop in downtown White Plains, and pedestrian safety is paramount. Crossing dozens of streets in any given afternoon stroll. My wife and I like to walk the downtown streets at night, especially when it's snowing. It's a really pretty walk. But to the mayor's point, on Main Street, if we're heading towards the train station, we hook a right at the Ritz, because there's really nothing more beyond the Ritz there. There's nothing really attractive to walk down to. If we're not getting on the train, there's really no reason to continue our walk.
We're in a very competitive market, thankfully, and I applaud all the work they're doing, but New Rochelle and Yonkers are doing tremendous projects, and are fundamental rivals, peers, and friendly rivals for White Plains. And we just don't compete with other Westchester cities. We should all know that every day, whether it's for business or residents or shoppers, we're competing with Long Island City, Hoboken, Brooklyn. We're in a very competitive market, and I think this is the kind of project that we need to really put us back on the map and compete.
We've talked a lot about street wall and identifying where we want to add life and sort of activity and entertainment. Why not use the street network? We have very incredibly wide boulevards in certain areas, and so it would make a lot more sense to be regulating a lot of the new development based on frontages, and what you're seeing in red here are larger kind of right-of-ways, and orange are kind of smaller. Clearly, we don't want to focus the height adjacent to the neighborhood above in Ferris and Hillside Terrace. So ways of looking at, as we rezone, reducing potential impacts on those neighborhoods while maintaining sort of the density in our core. This is an example, as I said, of some of the 3D modeling technology we've been leveraging to look at some of these scenarios. So from a perspective of what the infrastructure capacities would be, it's all here. It's not just the lines on the map, it's looking three-dimensionally at view corridors and the like. And this is an illustration of actually what the existing zoning, so that blue represents, in a maximum build-out scenario, what could be done in our downtown core. And as you'll see, those yellow boxes immediately adjacent to the station were sort of the conceptual development scenarios we're talking about. And clearly they're oriented so their thin sides are facing the neighborhood, again, preserving vistas down from Bowell Hill down to the downtown. We've started looking already at what square footages could be in those particular areas. This is a graph that represents the existing square footage of those 22 parcels in terms of built development. We have approximately 2 million square feet. And this chart looks at the maximum allowed right now is 5.3 million. So we're looking at 2.5 times development potential even under existing regulations. So that's part of the analysis. Is that too much? Is it too little? Can it be structured in a way that we're looking to preserve corridors and neighborhood impacts, et cetera? This is also looking at potential density bonus scenarios of what the square footage would be at different rates. And then quantifying that, right? So right now we have a rough calculation of assessed values of those parcels at $57 million, right? Which is a huge number in our downtown, but look at just what that next jump up to a maximum build out scenario would be. We're talking, 3 times, right? $161 million. And so you can clearly see that when we talk about density and sustainable development, urban cores, that there's a huge benefit to everybody. It's not just the folks living downtown, it's not the folks just living a block away, it's the city as a whole. If done right, there's an amazing amount of potential to unlock in this transit district from a financial perspective.
Now, the public was not allowed to speak or ask questions during the meeting. If you were expecting a concrete proposal, such as the train station will look like this when we're done, such as if you look to the left, there will be a 20-story building here. If you look to the right, there will be a 20,000-seat sports stadium here. That did not come out in this presentation. This presentation was basically conceptual. The most concrete thing that came out was when Christopher Gomez said that they will be rewriting the zoning with the idea of telling developers how to design the buildings to fit in with the overall conceptual plan as presented in the document marking the end of the study, the strategic plan summary.
Right, and what was also interesting about it, what was not there? There was no development targeted west of the tracks on the county property, which contains the county center and a parking lot, and
The county center
Battle
was
Hill.
not. The county center was not mentioned at all. Battle Hill was mentioned just in passing.
Yes, and that would be, right now, it's conceptualized to have new pedestrian walkways and bikeways, and also there was no design of the traffic flow over there.
Well, the traffic
Yeah.
came
It
up
could be,
when
but
Mayor
could not be,
Roach
yeah,
said
yeah.
conceptually they want to make many of the one-way streets in downtown two-way streets.
Two-way streets, including Hamilton, for example.
In some cases, very, very impractical. The original concept and the idea and the fact that it works was that the one-way streets were designed to bring people into town so they can get to their offices or get to the shopping very quickly, and then to get them out of town so they can get home or wherever else they need to go very quickly. And we see what happens with two-way streets in
People are
big
always trying
cities.
to turn left.
You have
against
left
traffic.
turns, you have right turns, you have pedestrians who now have to look both ways to see from which direction they're going to get run over by a car, instead of just having to look one way on a one-way street. But there seemed to be an intent expressed to make Martine Avenue, which is now one-way, into a two-way street.
Well, it's what now is needed is details.
The devil is always in the
Yes,
details, John.
it
We've
is.
heard that. It's a cliche. We keep hearing that over and over again. But here, too, the devil is in the details. But one thing which did stand out to me, anyway, is that if you listen to what the MTA fellow had to say, as far as the train station goes, we're not going to see anything dramatic happen for years, perhaps at least a decade, maybe more than a decade.
And I think you got to know what that's going to look like eventually.
We may see some cosmetic changes in the next 5 years or so down at the train station, but a major overhaul, It doesn't seem as if they're thinking that, largely because it's not in the MTA's budget.
Yes, and Mr. Gomez also said and showed the slide of the White Plains Mall redevelopment, which we've discussed at length the last 2 weeks, and said that that is a novel concept that fits in with their visions.
They're tying any redevelopment on the White Plains Mall site in with the Transit District redevelopment, but as a practical matter, it's a little far away from the train station. For example, on a recent rather cold and windy night, I walked from the train station to the vicinity of the White Plains Mall, actually, and it was very uncomfortable and not something that I would recommend.
Well, that's true. However, there was a nice destination at the end of the walk.
Just barely.
Yes, but
Anyhow.
But be that as it may, they are now going to redo the zoning codes and then present them to the Common Council, having lots of stepped-up terrace-type buildings to add height.
Once it is presented to the Common Council, there will have to be public hearings because changing zoning is a process which is etched in stone.
So this isn't going to happen anytime soon. Right. Meanwhile, Trump is still in transition.
Oh, let me tell you about it. Here we go with our regular feature. You can't make this stuff up. We're getting closer and closer to Inauguration Day, and it seems that President-elect Trump wants Lieutenant General Keith Kellogg for Chief of Staff and General Secretary of the National Security Council. Monica Crowley of Fox News would be Senior Director of Strategic Communications for the Council. Trump went after White House spokesman Josh Earnest during a rally in Hershey, Pennsylvania Thursday, calling him a foolish guy. Quote, "This foolish guy, Josh Earnest, I don't know if he's talking to President Obama. You know, having the right press secretary is so important because he is so bad. The way he delivers a message, he can deliver a positive message and it sounds bad." That's the way Trump characterized him. Now, he blasted him because Earnest, the White House press secretary, spoke about Russia's hacking of the Democratic National Committee and members of Hillary Clinton's campaign. Trump's ambassador to China, Iowa Governor Terry Branstad. During the campaign, it is said Branstad would ask Trump to refrain from saying anything bad about China. In New York City, on 56th Street, west of 5th Avenue and all around Trump Tower, there are few shoppers in the stores, hassles with deliveries, and a big drop in foot traffic. It seems 45 businesses on the block now have signed a petition to try to get the New York Police Department to move its command post so their street does not look like a dead zone. This week, a lot of people got upset because there was a low-flying military transport plane circling Manhattan. Apparently, no New York City officials knew the flight was happening. It turned out to be a Secret Service mission, something to do with security for Trump Tower. Now, when Trump turns Trump Tower into an auxiliary White House, anytime he's there, air traffic in a 30 nautical mile radius will be affected by what's called a temporary flight restriction. And those things can ruin your day if you're trying to fly somewhere. The United States will respond to Russia's hacking and fake news interference with the election. President Obama promised in an interview with National Public Radio, quote, "I think there is no doubt that when any foreign government tries to impact the integrity of our elections, that we need to take action, and we will, at a time and place of our choosing." That quote from the president. North Carolina Governor Roy Cooper, a Democrat, has threatened to sue the state's Republican-controlled legislature as lawmakers there try to strip the incoming Democratic governor of some of his executive powers. He defeated Republican incumbent Pat McCrory. Trump had announced that he would hold a news conference yesterday, December 15th, to reveal how he'd avoid conflicts of interest which will exist as soon as he takes office because of his business dealings. December 15th came and went with no news conference or announcement, but now they promise to let America know something sometime in January, but they won't say when. Trump met with executives from Silicon Valley at Trump Tower, and he allowed his children to sit in on the meeting. Twitter was not invited because Trump is mad at Twitter, even though he continues to use it.
It's mad at a lot of people.
Trump is mad at Vanity Fair magazine for publishing a review of Trump's restaurant in Trump Tower, which it called, and this is their assessment, probably the worst restaurant in the country. And
That's really aggressive.
And guess where Trump blasted Vanity Fair?
Twitter.
On Twitter, of
Right,
course.
no doubt.
Did I mention that Trump wants Rex Tillerson, the CEO of ExxonMobil, to be Secretary of State?
Who is the oil man? Who can he be?
And did I mention that we have learned that the Trump team has been pressing a Westchester businessman to become head of the Federal Aviation Administration, and asked him again as recently as yesterday, but he doesn't want to do it.
Wow. Not wanting to be part of the administration that's going to make America great?
Is
Wow.
that enough,
What turning
Trump
down?
in transition for one day?
It's always enough. It really is. Meanwhile, some stuff happened over in Harrison. Harrison announced that they were going to consider a supermarket for Corporate Park Drive, shown here. It's right off the Hutchinson River Parkway. Now remember when White Plains wanted to expand it with
White Plains has
an ordinance?
they've changed the
Yeah,
zoning
that's
to
right.
allow more mixed use in what had been strictly a corporate park area.
Right.
Harrison now is mixing use. They approved apartments for Westchester Avenue. Now they're approving a supermarket for Westchester Avenue.
And let's see the aerial view. There it is again. That's the way it looks from the air. So that'll be interesting to see whether this starts a trend. And Governor Cuomo held a press conference this week celebrating the topping off of the 8 towers of
That
the
little
new
inset
bridge.
in the upper left-hand corner was a group shot.
Yeah.
Now that the towers have been built,
He
they
says
can
it's
get
going to be
along and
on
string the
time.
cables, and as they string the cables, they can hang the roadway, and we just might have a Tappan Zee Bridge finished on
2018,
time,
Governor
huh?
says it's right on time. And a great little event happened this week, which we toured. Peter, tell us about it.
Well, you know, John, if you have been trying to drive along Court Street between Martine Avenue and Main Street in downtown White Plains this past week, you may have run into those concrete barriers at both ends of Court Street. Well, there's good reason for the barriers to be there, and no, it's not for a cold weather version of the farmers market.
They call it Winterfest, and it started December 10th and runs through Sunday, December 18th. It's open from 11 a.m. to 7 p.m. with free admission and features arts and crafts for sale, breads and cakes to eat or take home, hot cider if you've got a chill, jewelry, holiday decorations, clothing and leather goods, hats, and even Christmas trees. The city, along with the folks who manage the farmers market, put Winterfest together, and the Simon Company, which owns the Westchester Mall, sent over some holiday decorations they weren't using this year. John Bailey asked some of the people who paid a visit to Winterfest what they thought of it.
Mike Archer from Dobbs Ferry. I absolutely love the Winterfest here in White Plains.
What's great?
All the Christmas holiday spirit that's here, the trees, the food. I just got my family ornament. Just a great time.
Barbara Capasso, currently from Ossining, New York.
Okay, and what do you think of Winterfest today?
I love it. I love it. I think it's beautiful. It's nice and warm inside. There's plenty to choose from. Lots of homemade things. Original typewriters over there.
My name's Dave Green. I'm from Dobbs Ferry, and I love the idea of the Winterfest except for one thing. It's winter, and it's cold, and it would be much better if I wasn't all bundled up like this, but it's a great idea to bring people to the downtown, and it's nice to see that White Plains is growing and expanding and doing kinds of good stuff like this.
My name's Tony Kappa. I'm from White Plains.
Oh, terrific. A native.
Yes.
That's fantastic. Let's say, what do you think of this year's Winterfest?
It's very interesting. I thought it'd be a little bit bigger, but this is kind of cozy and warm. It's nice. We enjoy it.
My name's Kristen Lala. I'm also a native White Plains resident. And I think it's great. It's really nice. It is cozy. It's nice to be around our neighbors. It's heated.
And it's heated.
Yes, I know. I dressed extra warm, and I really didn't need to. 'Cause it's nice and warm, and it's great. A lot of nice people, and a good time.
Lacey Jeremiah. I'm from the Bronx. The atmosphere is wonderful. It's a pleasure to be here.
You know, John, that's one of those nice feel-good things. And if you're seeing this show before Sunday, December 18th, you have a chance to get down there and see it. Actually, It's through Sunday, December 18th.
Right, and it's really, they hope to, I was talking to Karen Pasquale, and she says they hope to make it bigger next year. Ben Sadoun USA put it together.
That's the outfit that they hired to run the farmers market, and this is just one of the other
But the brown sheds and the warming tent make it much more accommodating, even on a really cold day. So really, I think it's a nice addition to the holiday. And,
now if the city only went back to the old tradition of bagging the parking meters during the holiday shopping season,
you're really asking for too much.
The revenue you lose in overtime parking tickets might be made up in a flood of sales tax revenue.
Yes, you never can tell.
And then again, how can you put a price on goodwill?
No, certainly not. And this season we really need goodwill.
You know, there was some goodwill over at the high school these days because the sports teams have been honored.
Right. I mean, 160 students were honored with grades of 90 or better, and they were all athletes. You know, pursuing a rigorous training and schedule.
You know, it's nice to see that you can play sports. And keep up the academics. Isn't that an important thing to do?
Absolutely. In fact, they're really making a big effort. They're a group, probably My Brother's Keeper, and various concerned citizens was brought in by the mayor, and they met last week.
Well, we reported on it last week.
That's right, but they're going to do an action plan to help. Apparently, the school district isn't going to participate too much in it, but at any rate, they're going to submit an action plan to help improve performance of young men of Latino and African American extraction. But I mean, really, they should expand it to all, because it's not only persons of color that are, in a problem. There are a lot of white students too who are not performing up to par.
Well, over at the Westchester County Board of Legislators, they were performing up to par. We've got about a minute left to tell you that they passed the budget. Good thing is no tax increase again, right?
They're not doing my taxes.
However, there was the question of a $15 million shortfall, which they're going to plug up by leasing out the airport and getting a $15 million upfront payment from the designated company, which was going to take over operation of the airport. However, the legislature, or some leaders at the legislature, said, wait a second, how come you haven't sent this out to get other bids? Why did you just do this with one company?
How could this happen? I'm shocked that things are being decided without putting out RFPs.
So now their bottom line is they're going to go ahead, they're going to look for other bids to see if they can get a better deal elsewhere, and if they have to, they will then take the $15 million from a reserve of close to $150 million, which the county has sitting in the bank.
Perhaps we're being overtaxed.
Use that to plug the hole in what would be this new budget.
Right. John Bailey, Peter Katz, good night for White Plains Week.
This has been White Plains Week, news and commentary about White Plains, Westchester, and the world. The views and opinions expressed on this program were solely those of the participants. White Plains Week, produced by White Plains Citizen Net Reporter, and presented on Optimum Cable Channel 76 and Verizon Fios Channel 45. You may view White Plains Week anytime on the internet at whiteplainsweek.com, youtube.com, and wpcommunitymedia.org. For White Plains Week, this is Peter Katz speaking.